6 years ago, I left the Fox News channel, and now Tucker Carlson is gone. We'll have Donald Trump Jr. talking about that. But first, I guess you would like to know what's going on regarding Mr. Carlson, and that is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. I'm going to keep the speculation to a minimum. We don't do that here. I have been doing some reporting all day long. As you may know, many of the people that I trained at Fox News now run shows at the Fox News channel. So, you know, I get information, but I have to verify everything that comes in. I'm not like all the rest of the media that just throws up anonymous sources with a bunch of gibberish. We don't do that here. So let's run it down, what we know and how we know it. So this was a shock to Tucker Carlson and his staff. This morning they were putting together tonight, Monday night's program. They were actively involved with making the rundown, as all of us do who go on television each night to talk to you. In the middle of that, boom, Tucker Carlson is history at the Fox News show. That's how fast it came. Nobody knew. And that's in stone, okay? That's not speculation. So, what was the decision-making process? There are a number of things in play. First of all, if you watched 60 Minutes last night, you saw a man named Ray Epps, right, tell the audience that Tucker Carlson ruined his life. I'm going to deal with Mr. Epps in the final thought of today's broadcast, but that was a pretty strong assertion on 60 Minutes. And when I saw it, I said, oh, here comes the lawsuit against Tucker Carlson and Fox News from Ray Epps. If that name isn't familiar, Mr. Carlson hypothesized that he was involved with staging the January 6th riot. All right, that's a very shorthand version. Epps, of course, denies any of that. He was there, but he says he wasn't an undercover FBI agent or whatever other stuff was floating around. Again, I'll get to that at the end of the program. Number one. Number two, there are a number of lawsuits going to be filed shortly against Fox News board of directors, people who sit on the board, okay, by shareholders, people who own the stock. And by the way, Fox News stock was down big today. Okay, so FNC is aware those lawsuits are coming. And the board of directors themselves, the individuals sitting on the board, okay, they're going to have to defend themselves. That's big. And then Smartmatic, which I don't think is a very important lawsuit, since the Smartmatic company only had one county in the 2020 election where their machines were used. So they're suing for $2.6 billion. That's just insane. They'll settle, I believe, with Fox, but for not nearly what Dominion got. But that's an opinion of mine. All right. But the fact is, this litigation against Fox News is ongoing and destructive. Tucker Carlson is the lightning rod, okay? So an interesting piece of history. When I left 6 years ago, the factor was averaging close to 4 million viewers at 8 o'clock and another 2 at 11 o'clock for our rerun. That's 6 million people, right? No cable program has approached that, all right, since I left, because that's a pretty lofty number. Carlson took over for me in the first 2 years. He lost about 1 million of my viewers. Okay, he was doing around 328, 2,800,000. Then he made a very shrewd decision, and Tucker Carlson himself is a smart man and a talented broadcaster. Anybody who thinks he isn't is a fool. I mean, he knows what he's doing on television. So he decided to go to get viewers from the committed right, all right? A lot like Rush Limbaugh did. And he went into that precinct and he programmed for those Americans. His base was about 3 million people, which in this day and age puts him ahead of most other cable news outfits. Okay. So, but in doing that, his commentary became, in many cases, conspiratorial. And again, you can make a lot of money doing that. And there's nothing wrong with doing that as long as you tell people, this is my opinion, it's speculation, but this is what I think. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't disparage that. I'm a hard news guy. My opinions are based on facts. But the conspiracy industry is huge. Russian collusion. I mean, that was insane, and every news organization except Fox embraced that conspiracy. Did they not? Okay. So Carlson had a very successful run at Fox and was very influential among committed conservatives. They're different than casual conservatives. They're right there every day, okay? Want to know what is going on. At the same time, Fox News changed dramatically from a tightly structured operation run by a guy named Roger Ailes, who is no longer there, to what they call fiefdoms. Each show did its own thing. And it maintained its lead over CNN, completely hapless, and MSNBC, which is as crazy left as you can get. An interesting footnote, Don Lemon was fired today by CNN, and he says, Lemon, they didn't even tell him. They just texted him. Now, Lemon was fired primarily because his ratings are very low. They were low in prime time. They are low in the morning. He's a lightning rod like Tucker Carlson, so CNN felt we don't need him. He's not bringing in any money. And that brings me to the most essential point of this talking points. All right? Tammy Wynette is not part of television news. Okay? None of those operations are going to stand by their man. When the going gets rough, you're going to get thrown right overboard no matter who you are. That's the way American corporations work. You may have noticed that ABC News had a big purge in its executive ranks. CBS News, I understand, will soon follow. It doesn't matter how successful you are. It doesn't matter how loyal you are as a worker. Nothing matters. If the corporation feels you are a deterrent in any way, and it's more than you're bringing in, it's not worth it, you're gone. Now, I assume they'll have to pay out Tucker Carlson's contract. They had to pay mine out, okay? I mean, unless you violate some rule, all right? So I assume that Mr. Carlson will walk away with a nice piece of change. But it doesn't mitigate the turbulence in his life, all right? It doesn't. I know he didn't want to go out this way, and I don't even know if he knows what the inner decision-making was. But this will have a tremendous effect on the future of the Fox News channel, no doubt about that. But more importantly, on Republican politics in the 2024 presidential election. Because the Republican Party, most of it, paid attention to Tucker Carlson. Donald Trump just sat down with the man 2 weeks ago for an extensive interview, even though Tucker Carlson said disparaging things about Donald Trump. Trump overlooked it and said, you know, this guy's got a big audience, I'm going to go in and talk to him. So now, with Rush Limbaugh deceased, Tucker Carlson vanished, the Republican Party still has some clout. Sean Hannity, big-time radio audience and television, all right? And he's going to support the Republican candidate, there's no doubt. Laura Ingraham will. But the Republican profile in the media is much less now. And that will have an effect on mostly independent voters, because the word won't get out as fast, whatever the word may be. So all in all, this is, I want to check my notes to make sure I didn't, I actually was doing really aggressive reporting today. I got my little notes, I got it all over the place. I don't want to forget anything. Nope, I think I got it. So now you have it. Now I'm going to discuss this on News Nation tonight, 8 o'clock. I'll be a whole bunch of Glenn Beck radio tomorrow, and I will be continuing to assemble information because this is a complicated story. And there'll be reaction to the story, obviously. And again, we're not speculating here. We're not doing that. I'm telling you what we know to be true. And that's the memo. So joining us now from Palm Beach, Florida, is Donald Trump Jr., deeply involved in his father's re-election campaign. And there's a new book out. We'll tell you all about that at the end of this interview. But first, I want to get your reaction to Mr. Carlson and what I just said.
Listen, I agree with you. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but I look at him as perhaps a once-in-a-generation type talent, someone willing to challenge the conformity and the norms of the establishment, willing to call out senators and governors alike that, frankly, not a lot of people are doing in corporate media these days. And so I think it's a big blow to conservatives, to the GOP. I think Tucker Carlson's someone who's been able to reach across the aisle, in a sense, bring over a lot of independence by actually having the logical conversations that people need to be having, whether that be about war in Ukraine, whether that be about vaccines, whether that be whatever it may be. And while that may be branded conspiratorial by some in corporate media, it seems like he's been batting pretty solid 6 months later when the truth actually comes out, Bill.
I'm not sure I agree with that on all fronts, but that's for another day. What was your reaction when the discovery for the defamation lawsuit by Dominion revealed that Mr. Carlson said bad things about your father? Did you react to that at all? Did your father react to it at all?
I never actually had a conversation with my father about it. I've had a good relationship with Tucker for a long time now. He's one of the guys I actually, agree with on the vast majority of things. And so, I understand how those things work, and I understand how conversations with other people work. So it doesn't bother me all that much. Everyone's entitled to that opinion. I think the sit down last week was actually very interesting when, a guy like Tucker coming at it and understanding that, Trump was right about things like Ukraine and the war, and one of the few people actually willing to call out that insanity. And so while they may have disagreements on things, and perhaps at that time, because that was around the J6 fiasco where everyone was being fed a narrative, but not everyone knew exactly what was actually going on. I totally understand it.
Was your father angry when Carlson said those not nice things about him?
I actually never had a conversation with him about it, so I don't know.
Well, you just said you did.
No, I said I've had plenty of conversations with Tucker Carlson, but I've never had a conversation with my father about.
Oh, you had a conversation with Tucker Carlson. Oh, so you talked with Carlson. I'm sorry, I thought that's my mistake. So you talked with Carlson about what he said about your father, and what was Carlson's? Did he? No,
I didn't say that. I have, generally speaking, I've had a lot of conversations with Tucker, and I agree with a lot of what he says.
Okay, but I want to get to
the things that he's been written on. So I've never had a conversation with either one of them about that one.
About that, your personal, you weren't offended by it that much.
Bill, in all fairness, when you've gone through the stuff that I've been through over the last couple of years, 50 hours of testimony for treason, honestly, someone's text message with someone else in the heat of the moment, literally that kind of stuff doesn't bother me in the slightest anymore.
All right, and I understand. Yeah. Okay, so your father is the media master, and even people who hate him know that. All right, he uses the media. That's why I believe he was elected first place 2016. I did the first interview, as you know, with him when he announced his candidacy. He knows where the audience is, where the power lies, and all of that. So accepting Sean Hannity, and as I said, Hannity maintains a very high profile, and he will support your father. The Murdochs don't support your father any longer. Have you discussed
well, it certainly doesn't seem that way, yes.
No, they don't. Believe me.
No.
Have you discussed that with your father?
I haven't, because it doesn't need to be discussed. It's fairly clear. I've said this for a long time, but obviously there's the Paul Ryan faction of the conservative movement, or of the Republican Party, because it's not really the conservative movement anymore. It almost is the opposite of that. It is very clear in what they want to do and the direction they want to go. And I think that's very different than where, the average hardworking blue collar American that also happens to be conservative is. But you've certainly seen that aspect emerge. And so whether it's this decision, whether it's the Dominion settlement, I can't quite make any sense of it, because I don't know why you'd settle for $750 million with a company who's not worth a tiny fraction of that. The decision-making process there doesn't seem to make much sense to me, but it's not my call to make, so that's up to them.
Well, the reason they settled was that Rupert Murdoch himself was going to have to testify, and he didn't want to testify. And then once that was a fait accompli, the judge ruled that Mr. Murdoch would have to go in. And in fact, he was the second witness set to be called. Then money didn't matter anymore. The man did not want to go in there and testify. And then all the other talent would have to go in. As you know, the press would have just blown that thing up to Hiroshima-like status. And the company made the decision. Again, board of directors have stuff to say about it. You know that. You're a corporate guy. And they said, look, we got to get out
$1 billion is still $1 billion. So,
look at
again, they could be right. They could lose entirely, but you're not getting an almost $1 billion settlement for a company that's worth a few million dollars. And, at least based on my understanding of that. Now, again,
and
if
why
you don't want to get dragged through the mud, I know how that works.
Yeah.
Trust me, it's happened to me and my family enough, but it seems like an interesting position to take from a fiduciary standpoint. But if you own enough of the company, I guess you can do it.
Yeah. And why do you think that company has $4 billion in the bank? You don't have to answer that question. Right here, you're looking at them.